regardless of who Kentucky hires, and we know they're going to hire an upper echelon guy. I know it's looking like Scott Drew right now. At least he's the odds-on favorite. There's a lot of rumors going around. I feel like one of the most important attributes, because you're going to have resources, obviously you're going to be able to recruit and things like that, is being able to evolve and adjust as the game continues to evolve and adjust. Because I think that's what got Coach Cal at the end of the day, Jack, and call it pride, call it whatever you want. Do you feel like that's an important attribute that this next coach needs to have?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what kind of made Coach Cal so successful to start his time at Kentucky is kind of what ate him alive at the very end and sent him out. He was a guy that was made for the job, just the PR god around there, and just knew what to say, when to say it, how to say it. And fans ate it up. But when your, kind of spiel runs hollow, saying it over and over and over again after 15 years, he said when he got here, it was a 10-year job. And then for almost perfect timing, the last 5 years of his time there ended up being, some of his worst. So I think it's one of those things that you have to know how to embrace the spotlight and be, at the forefront of college basketball and so many different things. And that's what he was. But when it kind of comes down to, the second half, you got to continue to do that and find new ways to keep the messaging fresh. And that's just something that Coach Cal wasn't able to do. And that's why when he departed, he said, I just need somebody around here to have a new voice, because my voice just isn't getting through anymore. There was not a trust level factor that by losing the way that he did down the stretch, he kind of lost the fan base. And I think he realized that and knew that he needed a new audience, and this fan base needed, a new voice. And I think it's a good thing for both sides that a parting of ways happened.
I agree. I mean, we talked about it as the old Michael Scott win-win-win. I mean, for Arkansas, for Kentucky, and for Coach Cal, it's kind of seemed like he lost the benefit of the doubt. But, when you look at the candidates, obviously Scott Drew's looking like he's at the top. Dan Hurley, all these other guys. We also at the top of the show, how many coaches do you think have been offered the Kentucky job? We've seen guys come out and say, I'm not leaving, but that doesn't mean I can come out here and say I'm not running for, the president in this election, but they didn't ask me to run.
It was very complicated because he kind of dragged things out a little bit unnecessarily. There was some talk of him getting cold feet and saying, well, maybe I don't love Fayetteville all that much. What if I were to try to kiss and make up with Mitch Barnhart? And it just kind of got to the point where it was like, buddy, here's the door, please. Just you've made this bed, just go lay in it. Let's just move on and do what's best for all of us involved. So that kind of delayed things for Kentucky. They weren't able to officially go through the measures of a real coaching search at this point. So it was all back channel things. Hey, what would your interest be? What would your number look like? Some of those things. So I don't even think we've gotten to the point of tangible offers in hand to anybody yet. I think Scott Drew it's been made very clear to him that the job is his if he'd like to have it. Conversations are ongoing with Dan Hurley's people and representation saying, hey, what would it take? We know that you are the hottest name in basketball, regardless of level. What would it take? And it's going to be a Godfather offer. What does that look like to you? And I think there's a feel that the search doesn't need to extend beyond that. Talking to people around Billy Donovan, he's kind of been Kentucky's golden goose for 2 decades. They tried hiring him in 06, 09, various points when things went south with Coach Cal. His name has just always kind of come up. He's in the middle of a play-in situation, potentially going to the playoffs with the Bulls. It's a disaster up there right now, so they don't even necessarily love him. So I think that the timing doesn't make sense for them, and I think Kentucky's side knows that this thing really does need to extend beyond the guy that we know we love and would like to have up here in Scott Drew, or kind of the pie in the sky in Dan Hurley.
Jack, I'd like some insight on Coach Calipari's decision. It's not as if he left Kentucky to go to the NBA or to retire or even to take a job at North Carolina, Duke, Kansas, something like that. I mean, he's staying in the same conference, leaving Kentucky after being there for 15 years. He's going to stay in the same conference. He's going to take less money, and he's going to go to a program that doesn't really have the historical pedigree that Kentucky does. Is there any scenario here where, Coach Calipari was sort of made to feel as if he was being pushed out a bit?
Yeah, I think the writing was on the wall that it was kind of my understanding after the Oakland loss, he didn't even really feel the pressure that was the fan. Like, he was put on such an island, and he put himself on this island down the stretch where the reality of just how much fans didn't want him around here never really set in with him. He was just kind of going about his day going, man, that life is good in Lexington. And I think as his kind of close circle started going, hey man, like it's kind of bad out there. Like, it's a war zone out there. You better open your windows because this is kind of ugly. And he finally opened up his windows and was like, ooh, I don't know if this is a relationship I'll be able to repair. I don't know. Like, I sell the dreams of recruiting classes and building rosters and all that. I don't know if, my messaging is just, they're not listening to my messaging anymore. Maybe it's time for me to find my own exit plan. And the first call beyond that, and I know USC was interested. There was some talk with Michigan, but the first school that kind of reached out and said, hey, we want you to make us our king. We want you to take our program over. And he has a big ego. He's a guy that wants to feel like the godfather of college basketball again. The offer that Arkansas made to him made him feel that way again. And when you have a big ego, you kind of like, get stroked a little bit and making you feel loved. And I think those two things went hand in hand. And that's why he ended up taking that offer, whether or not it was necessarily the right fit for him. I still think it's a weird fit for him, but I think he's going to do very well there. But yeah, I think it was more him just seeing the writing on the wall that this could make for a really, really toxic situation if I were to try to, kiss and make up with Kentucky.
The fan base is one thing, and we've been hearing that from Kentucky fans for the last couple seasons now. Was that same sentiment shared with the administration and with the athletic director?
Yeah, and I think that was a part of it. They had complete support in John Calipari. They trusted his vision and said, you got us to highs after the Billy Gillispie era and some really, really poor lows before you got here. We trust your vision. If you have one that you think can make this make it work with this fan base, we trust you. And I think that was also a part of when he tried to kind of kiss and make up and maybe got cold feet a little bit, why UK administration was like, no, buddy, it's, we trusted you the first time around when you said you could make it work. And if you're going and flirting with other jobs and getting, agreeing to 5-year deals before even coming to, talk to me like a man, it's very clear that the train's too far down the track and there's just no repairing this relationship.
Wow.
There's a movie, and I'm trying to remember what the title of it is. Kirsten Dunst is in it. She's playing Marie Antoinette. And this kind of, Jack, you explaining this scenario with the fans, kind of the music stopping. I remember that there's this one scene where they're watching a play, and the play ends, and Marie Antoinette starts clapping. I guess clapping wasn't a huge thing back then. And then everybody else sees she's clapping and they love her, so they start clapping. Well, a couple years goes by and it gets worse out on these streets. She's at a play, the play ends and she starts clapping and nobody else starts clapping. And she's looking around and everybody's just looking at her like,
I know what
crazy.
movie you're talking about. You'd be crazy to think what the name of it is.
What?
Marie Antoinette.
It's Marie Antoinette.
Is it Marie Antoinette? Okay.
That's what it is.
There you go. It's that simple. There's your history lesson for the day, Crane and Company.
Jack, I just want to know this. It's hard for me to sit here and believe, especially if I'm trying to hire somebody at the Kentucky head coach basketball position, that they didn't reach out to Nate Oats after what Alabama did in that Final Four run. So can you give me any leeway, to why Kentucky wouldn't reach out to a guy like Nate Oats?
Well, I think even Nate Oats people kind of through back channel said, hey, I would be open to listening if that was something you would be interested in. Mitch Barnhart, unfortunately, fortunately, he's an unbelievable dude, great morals, and there is a lot to be said about that and what he values. And I think some of the off-court stuff really spooked him a little bit, and knowing that he has to absolutely nail this hire, and he also likes the PR. So the good side of John Calipari was he always knew how to handle tough situations, even when stuff with the law, stuff with, kind of things going on behind the scenes, academics, things. Cal always had the right thing to say, and that's never necessarily been Nate Oats' forte. And I think that kind of spooked him a little bit, where he's like, yes, I know he's the most exciting guy in college basketball, beyond Dan Hurley, but I just don't know if now is the right time, if it were maybe 2-3 years from now and some some of that stuff kind of farther down in the history, maybe, but right now just didn't make sense for us. And I think part of the reason that got back to Nate Oats, that he wasn't going to be in the top tier of guys. I think he knew that it wasn't going to extend too far beyond Scott Drew anyway. So I think he was kind of I'm taking my name out of the running before we, got to keep the momentum going at Alabama. So I think it was a good move on his part, and I understand on Mitch's part as well.
So the Brandon Miller stuff's why Nate's not going. All right, let's go to the Booster Club. Let's go to Cedar Creek Curmudgeon. He wants to know, Jack, if the Cats' first 3 choices fall through, would BBN welcome back Rick Pitino, and would Barnhart even go there?
Bum, bum, bum.
Big old fat no. I'll be honest. I love Rick. I think that he, again, for somebody in the business of traffic and clicks and that people driving interest in this brand, there ain't a better click wizard than Rick Pitino. Everything that he says turns to gold. So I would love him. He's a great, unbelievable, one of the best of all time, and just in terms of pure X's and O. And I think that's something that this fan base is hungry for. A guy that maybe we need to focus a little bit less on the PR and just get a guy who can coach basketball games and win you games in March. That at some point, that's all that matters. And you could argue that Rick Pitino might be the best in the business at that. And I just think that ship has sailed and gone a whole cruise. He's already rounded different continents, and it's just not going to make its way back to Lexington. And I would love it. I think if we were to get to kind of some of those secondary options, and I don't think it's going to, I think that, like a Bruce Pearl is somebody that would crawl over glass to get to Lexington. I think there are some other guys, Chris Beard, that have, I think, indirectly made it clear that they would be interested if that call was made. So I don't think we're going to get to that point, but you have options beyond just the Mark Popes of the world that I think some Kentucky fans are just terrified that Mitch Barnhart's going to go with the ultimate safe hire.
Yeah, Jack, but before we get you out of here, if you're a betting man, which I'm not sure if you are, but if you had to say right now the Jack Pilgrim, who I'm picking to be the next coach, is it going to be Scott Drew or is it going to be somebody else?
I think they are going to make Dan Hurley tell them no, give them an offer that, okay, UConn can't afford this, try to do the math on it and say, all right, while also understanding he kind of has NBA dreams. He's this hungry, I want to be the king of basketball, not just college basketball, but the entire basketball world. And maybe he would want to be the New York Knicks in 2, 3, 5 years, whatever that timeline looks like. So again, we talked about Mitch Barnhart being little safe. He likes having safety nets, and I think that might spook him a little bit just in terms of how short that runway would look like with Dan Hurley. But I think they're going to make him say no and then push all of their chips in on Scott Drew. And I think that's going to be how this all unfolds, where Scott Drew is the next head coach at Kentucky.
Well, Jack, I agree with you 100%. We're pushing all our chips on you guys over at KSR at On3 for this search, man. Tell everybody where they can find you, social media, all that stuff. And thanks for getting up with us, man. This was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. At Jack Pilgrim KSR on Twitter or X, and KSR YouTube channel. We've been pumping out podcasts and rapid reactions and all that stuff. And then KentuckySportsRadio.com. We're pushing out all the good content. So appreciate you guys having me.
Definitely, man. Appreciate you, Jack. You and Matt and the whole crew do a great job. Thanks for coming on. Sure, we'll have you back on again, especially after Kentucky nails down this hire. What's up, YouTube? Hey, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, turn that notification bell on if you don't mind. We really appreciate it. Helps grow the show so we can keep bringing you the content that you obviously enjoy.